Okay, hi everyone. My name's Dan. As introduced before, I'm a UX designer at Pixel Fusion, and today I'm going to talk to you about our experience with the zoo and designing a digital and nice responsive journey, starting with the website. So at the zoo, if you haven't been there before, it's a fantastic place to visit, and that's really reflected in the team that work there as well. We had a dedicated room at the zoo where we could post up our notes, conduct workshops, and sprint demos as well. This was great because it got rid of the us versus them kind of client mentality. We had a shared space where we could be part of one team, and that really meant we could be part of one team and work collaboratively together. Here's what the homepage looked like before we started the project, and as you can see here, there's a lot of information on the page. 2 main navigations. That doesn't actually make it more usable, by the way. It made it more difficult, and it wasn't responsive either. And just to give you a preview, this is what it looks like now. Okay, so going right back to the start, the zoo team had already spent a considerable amount of time and effort getting to where they are now, but the website still lacked quite a few features that were crucial to their business. They wanted to launch a responsive website in 12 weeks. They also wanted a plan your day feature for their users. They wanted to sell tickets online, which they couldn't do at the moment. And they also wanted to rebrand at the same time. Can you just fit that in? That's not a big job, right? Yeah. Sorry, I just changed that a bit. I'm taller. So these needs essentially formed our base for our MVP. So where do we start with this? Well, we decided to take a look at the Google Analytics and the site traffic, and here's what we found. 51% of users were going straight to pricing from a Google search. So obviously pricing was hugely important. 65%, so almost 2/3 of all site searches from the homepage were going straight from a search rather than navigation. And most of those search results focused around price. That was the main thing, followed by palm oil, kiwi, tickets, map, birthday, and shop. Mobile was most popular between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. on the weekends, which is really interesting. There was a consistent spike over that period. And desktop was most popular between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. during work days. So obviously people were checking out the zoo, not doing any work. Okay, so from this data we made the following hypotheses, always a fun word to say. We assumed that people use their mobile while they're at the zoo, given there was that consistent spike on Saturday mornings. People plan their day in advance on their desktop because they're not working. And people want to buy tickets online, given that there was a lot of search results for things like price and shop. And that was the kind of key thing that they were wanting to go to. So at this point, this is kind of exactly what the business needs were as well. So that fitted in really nicely. And given this is quantitative data, it was really useful because it tells us what's going on, but it didn't explain why this is happening. So we decided to investigate further to find out why. How do we do this? Well, we asked the users. So we decided to do a field trip at the zoo and find out if these assumptions were correct. We had a discovery sprint at the start of this project, so that fitted in rather nicely. Field trip, yeah, cool. Always fun. So here it looks like we're interviewing a baby in a pram, but actually we're interviewing the parents that are just slightly out of frame there. We also talked to the zoo volunteers as well, and this proves to be super valuable because they're obviously exposed to a lot of different users and get asked lots of questions all the time. So we were able to understand what visitors were looking for when they were interacting with the volunteers. And of course, no field trip was complete without ice cream, so that was always a big plus. Okay, so we did the field trip, and here's what we found out. Visitors didn't visit the website before going to the zoo. They didn't even think about it, which was interesting. Not only that, but they didn't use their mobile at the zoo. They only used it for photos, nothing else. They also felt that they didn't need to purchase tickets online. They figured, hey, I'm going to the zoo anyway, I can just buy tickets there. So what's the difference? But everybody struggled with a map, which is something that no one sort of thought about initially. And that's very apparent with pretty much every user that we bumped into when we did our field trip. Here's a photo that I took of a couple struggling with the map, and they stood there in that very place, looking at the map, turning it upside down, inside out, trying to figure out how to get to the next encounter. You can see there's a wayfinder sign up in the top right, the kind of green color, camouflaged amongst the background, so they didn't see that either. And they ended up looking at, asking a zoo official here who wasn't that sure where to go either. So it took a long time to work out, and it was obviously a strong pain point for a lot of the visitors at the zoo. So what do we do now? Well, we collected all these findings, a lot of them quite different to what we expected. We thought users would use their mobile phones at the zoo. They didn't do that. We thought they planned their visit in advance. They didn't do that. We thought people wanted to buy tickets online, and it turns out they didn't want to do that either. So where does that kind of leave us now? The data is saying one thing, the quantitative data, but the qualitative data that we got from interviewing our users says something completely opposite. Are the users lying to us? What's going on? Do we decide to design a better map and just call it a day? That seemed to be the biggest pain point for everybody. And although a map would be a great feature, and I was really pushing for it, it wasn't part of our MVP, which is what we kind of came back to. The zoo still needed a better platform. They needed a responsive website. And they really needed something to help educate the public about wildlife conservation, as well as an opportunity to generate revenue through selling tickets online and collecting donations as well. So we really had to kind of pull back to the core focus, and the team decided to continue building this MVP, park the additional features like a really cool interactive map, which would be awesome, until after as an enhancement. So we continued on and started with wireframes. All of the wireframes. We did lots of ideation at the start and super low fidelity, like you can see here. This level of detail was good enough to talk through ideas with the engineers and the client as well. And throughout this process, we discussed the wireframe ideation with the engineers very closely and very early on in the process. We didn't throw polished designs over the fence like you would in a waterfall project. The engineers were very much part of the team as well and part of the ideation. So it was really collectively working out how we can make this work. We also created a prototype and did usability testing on the new designs. So this was one-on-one testing in one room, and then we actually streamed it live in the room next door, which you can see here. So anyone could be a part of it. So we had designers in here. We've got a UX designer and a developer in here. And we also had clients come in and take a look too. So they could really be a part of the UX process, which is fantastic. So the finished product, well, after doing that testing, the responses were overwhelmingly positive. Everything we thought they didn't want, they loved. We had comments like, "It's beautiful, I love it. Oh, exciting, I like all the pictures." Fantastic. "I like Plan Your Day, it gives you all the info." And, "Oh, I can book tickets online? That's fantastic." All things users told us they didn't want. So what do we learn from this process? Well, I'm a big believer in focusing on learning rather than failing. People talk a lot about failing early or failing fast. And while I do agree that is a good mindset, but failing isn't particularly useful unless you learn something from it. I know people who have failed and failed again and keep failing because they haven't learned from their mistakes. You can also, you don't have to fail in order to learn something. You can learn and win at the same time too. So the object here is to learn lean. It's less risky that way. The lo-fi, the better. So arm yourself with Sharpies, Post-its, stuff that we use all the time, hopefully, and go out there and talk to people and just scribble on your Post-its. Or if you're doing a card sort, for example, it's very easy to just scribble down categories on the card sort and let the users sort it. Easy, job done. Most tests can be done using these tools. Another big thing is hypothesize and validate. So find out what you know now, create assumptions, and find out what you don't know. It's okay if it turns out to be different to what you expected, but at least you start somewhere. And for our case, it was our MVP. Have you ever presented your designs to a client and the client says something like, "Can you give me more options?" Or, "I'll know it when I see it." Probably everyone's had that, I'd say. Sometimes users don't know what they need necessarily. They're used to their environment as it is now, and they don't consider how it could be better. They just kind of accept how it is. And I think as designers, that's a really foreign concept to us. We're always seeking improvement and potential in everything that we do. And I think the only way to kind of get around this in a clear manner is to prototype and test our designs to really make sure that what we're building is bang on what they need. So make sure you take note of how they interact with the prototype, not just what they say, but what they do as well, because they will lie to you. Thank you.